Hello everybody, this is another lesson from www.yourtechvision.com, and today we're going to do a lesson on the Braille Protractor. I'm going to go over some great tricks that I've come up with for my students. If you need more detailed information on the Braille Protractor, do a YouTube Google on Susan Osterhaus at the Texas School for the Blind. She has some wonderful videos out there on this. So the first thing I start with is I actually tactile the back, or I put some spongy pad on. And this mat you can just pick up at the grocery store. Boaters use this to hold their plates and dishes, glasses in place. It just lines the cupboard. You can use this for Braille paper also. Just make a mat of this. This stuff really comes in handy. Anything that needs to be held down and snug so it doesn't move around is great for that. So I just glued that right to the back of the Braille Protractor. I also have kids who have very limited fingers, and they of course don't have enough fingers to hold this in place, but they can literally with one finger and hold that in place because of the sticky backing. So the first thing I do is actually go over what all of these dots mean. And if you feel this protractor, it's Braille and it's also low vision. But I teach my low vision kids these techniques also, so they're not, leaning over 1 to 2 inches from it. So as they feel them, they're going to feel 3 dots at 0. They're going to move it along. They're going to feel 3 dots at 45. They're going to feel 3 dots at 90. They're going to feel 3 dots at 135, and all the way around, and they feel 3 dots at 180. And this, of course, can also work in reverse. 180 can be 0 too. It's just a matter of counting. And then, of course, we start over again, and they figure out what the 1 dot and what the 2 dots mean. Well, then we do the 2 dots. So 2 dots mean everything on a 10. So you've got 10, 2 dots, 20 has 2 dots, 30 has 2 dots, 40 has 2 dots, 50, 60, 70, and so on. Then we go over what the 5 means, which is 1 dot. So 5, 15, anything ending with a 5, a number 5, is going to have 1 dot. And then I just play a game with them, and I'll say, okay, how many dots does 50 have? And they're going to say 2. How many dots does 80 have? They're going to say 2. How many dots does 115 have? And they're going to say 1. And then I'm going to say, how many dots does 45 have? And at first, if they don't catch on to what you're doing, they're going to say 1 dot, and then they're going to catch themselves and say, oh no, 3 dots. Because of course you clearly want them to understand what 45 degrees is. And then I have them stand up and they actually use their body. They're going to stand at 0 degrees and they're going to turn 45 degrees, they're going to turn 90 degrees, 180, 360. So they truly understand. They're going to get their body involved and they truly understand what degrees are. And as soon as they do it with their body, it is amazing how the light of understanding goes on. So once they get that down, then we sit down and we actually work on the protractor. So we start off with the easiest concept, and of course that's 90 degrees. They did that with their body. They clearly understood what turning 90 degrees is. So I have them take a nice big marker, 2020 pen or a Sharpie, and for low vision kids they can easily see this. Now if you're working with blind kids, you need to have a rubber mat with Braille paper on top of that, and then a tool that will actually imprint the actual angle, and then the child will use their slate and stylus and Braille on it. But I also teach my blind kids to use print, so then they don't have to hand it to a transcriber and then that work get into the teacher even later. So then the blind student can just mark 90 degrees with their pen, number 1, and so on, hand that work right into the teacher. So let's go ahead and do 90 degrees, and I'm just going to use 2 fingers here, and I'm going to just draw 90 degrees. And you can either leave it like that and do number 1, or if you need to, you can just turn your paper upside down so the kids can do their angles, and they can do it number 1, and they're of course going to draw in 90 degrees. And so let's go ahead and do another angle down here. Let's go ahead and do 35 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and just find my 35 degrees. And I'm going to make sure there's 1 dot there that truly is. And I always make sure my kids, really align that up correctly. Don't let them do sloppy work. And this is a wonderful time to go over supplementary angles, of course, the larger angle. And and some kids will immediately start drawing that and say, oh, that's 30 degrees. So I always have them stop and say, okay, now what was 90 degrees? Well, 90 degrees was pretty big. So if you're going less than 90 degrees. Can that truly be 30 degrees? And then of course they think about it and they say, well, no, it's got to be the other side. And of course it has to be the other side. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to draw their 30 degrees in there. And then we're going to go over supplementary angles. And at first I'm going to go ahead and have them draw that angle in there also. And we're going to say, okay, 180 minus 35 is what? And then they need to think about it. Okay, well, they can easily do that in their head if they do 180 minus 30, and they're going to say 150, but it's 5 degrees less than that, so it's 145. So they can easily put 145 there, and they're going to put 35 up there. And then I always have them double check their math. Okay, 5 and 5, yep, that's 0. And you carry your 1, 3, 4, plus 1 more is 8. Okay, that truly is 180 degrees. That equals up to 180 degrees. I always have them check their math on that. Okay, so now let's get into the issue of doing really small angles. So let's say the child has to do 10 degrees. Well, they're going to place it down, they're going to do 10 degrees, and they're going to immediately find out you cannot do 10 degrees, but you can do the supplement of 10 degrees. So here's where they really clearly need to understand the supplement. So they're going to go ahead and they are going to draw in the supplement first of 10 degrees. And what I always have them do is they need to move their arrow completely out of the way, and they're going to move their protractor over just a little bit so they can actually get that angle in there, and you'll understand why in just a second. And then they're going to draw the line out, and sure enough, there is their 10 degrees. That easy. If they're low vision, they can easily track that all the way in. When they're blind, they're going to feel out that there's a tiny little hole, a gap right there. You can just take a ruler, line it straight up, and they can take their tactile tool and draw completely over it. So blind, low vision kids can completely do this independently. Blind kids, of course, are going to be taking their slate and stylus and brailing it so they clearly understand it, and then they're going to back it up with print so they can bring it right into school and hand that work in also. So that's the way you handle those degrees that are really, really tiny. And of course, you can do that with 5 degrees, 15, and anything where that arrow is completely blocked off. So those are just some really great tricks for the Braille Protractor. And once again, if you need more detail on the Braille Protractor, Susan Osterhaus from the Texas School for the Blind has a lot of videos out there for you. Okay, try those tricks out.